the home run was to find a system that did it all. And that ended up taking generator kind of for us off the table, and battery moved into that role of having stored energy so that we could always have enough for that contingency event, unexpected, unscheduled contingency event, even if it was 5 minutes or 5 hours. And then otherwise have a general building solar system that would be trying to keep us off the grid, every single minute possible.
Welcome back to another episode of Renewable Rides. Today, my co-host is one of our co-founders and SVP of Operations, Calvin Fine. Super excited to have Calvin join us today. Our guest is Bart Calame, CEO of Compass Dermatopathology. Compass is a nationally recognized multi-specialty medical company, primarily focused on dermatology with a full-service dermatopathology laboratory. We'll get into more of what that means in the podcast. On today's episode, we discuss why, after 15 years as founder and CEO of the business, energy came onto Bart's radar, the challenges he faced when trying to explore his options and identify partners, what led him to feel confident in making a $1 million purchase decision, and how energy fits into their long-term business strategy. We appreciate Bart for taking the time to share his experience. Bart, thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you, especially on your birthday. We're delighted to have you join us on a special day. We like to start off all these conversations with learning a bit more about yourself. So, what are you passionate about?
Thanks, Dan. Happy to be here. Passionate about personally? I meant to ask you that. Business or personal?
Both.
I mean, my single biggest favorite thing to do is run. So if you really want to know who I am outside of business, it's a runner. And I'm older. I want to be doing more than I am doing because I'm working so hard. But if I have any free time, it's probably thinking about another marathon that I could aim at and train for. But the training takes longer than it used to. I'll leave it at that. But the passion's still there. And then as far as business goes, it's just, in particular to what we do every day. I mean, I've been so blessed that I did not ever think I would be in healthcare. I have an IT background, telecom and communications was my business major. And but to meet my wife and get into, of all things, dermatology and dermatopathology, our customer is the patient. So it's infectious that, and obviously as the CEO, I need to make sure the company culture, remembers that we're supposed to treat people every day and fix skin problems. And so there's a lot of passion that's kind of I've acquired, let's say, through just working beside my wife for the last 20 years.
Love it.
Yeah.
Bart, maybe as you started to touch on it, but can you tell us more about the business and kind of when you got into it, what specifically do you guys do?
Yeah, it's broadly dermatology, which is obviously everything to do with the skin. And so we are traditional doctors seeing patients and helping them with broad range of skin issues from let's say acne to invasive melanomas. And that's a really broad range of things. And then in particular, we are a subspecialized laboratory focusing on skin cancer, where we receive the biopsy specimens that other dermatologists might have snipped off of their patients anywhere in the country. And we're overnight shipping FedEx, let's say, direct into our San Diego-based lab, where we render those specimens into microscope slides, and our pathologists look at them under the microscope and send a report back to the dermatologist that saw the patient in person. And so we are a dermatopathology lab, and that most patients have no clue that that's a behind-the-scenes function that most outpatient clinic doctors or hospital doctors have supporting them in the background. So we're national and in our 16th year, and we've been growing steadily. And so we're a San Diego-based national dermatopathology laboratory.
Beautiful. For the past 16 years, have you been thinking about energy, or what prompted you to have to think about energy other than, coming into the office every day and turning on your equipment and turning on your lights? What forced the issue?
Yeah, sure. Two main reasons. I mean, it is, and I'm going to say it's great for the job market in a way. It is a heavily manual labor. Some of those lab processes require a lot of bench work and things that can't be automated very easily. So we have a lot of employees. So we have a large building footprint. And then as the decade plus has gone by, we have been able to invest in automation more because of scale. And those heavy equipment laboratory workflows, or those systems, if you will, they draw a lot of power. So just in general, as part of scale, we consume more electricity more and more every year just because of scale of transactions per day. And then at the same time, as we all know, the cost of energy continues to climb year by year. So at some point, getting away from just pulling energy off the grid, we had to look at options, or we knew we needed to as we kept scaling up.
And Bart, before you got to thinking about building on-site renewables for your business, I know you've got some experience in doing this at home as well.
We do. Yeah, we had already gone through a smaller version footprint with, name brand goes here. Do you want me to mention the name?
Go for it.
We just went with the typical Tesla, residential system, and we did battery as well, and that went really smoothly. And so it's a different footprint. Our home didn't have I would have liked to put twice as many solar panels on the roof as we could, but we put a 6 kilowatt. Is that right? I think that's 6 kilowatt system in place, and then put the batteries in the garage. And then we both have Tesla cars, and so we're drawing off of that as well. And that's been great. The power hasn't gone off too many times since we installed it, but it went off a couple times and we didn't even know, and just kind of clicked along. And then otherwise, it's fun to watch the house run all the way through the night on the batteries and not need to ever go back on the grid, and kind of play around with those apps on your phone and dial in all the settings, so to speak. But that went really smoothly. But if you to the extent that made us feel like we were contributing as well, our electric bill certainly went way down, but it was something that we wanted to do.
How much do you think having that experience in your personal life played into your decision to start getting interested in building an energy system for your business?
Yeah, it was huge. It certainly made us a lot more familiar with not only just the nomenclature, but just how many different major components does it take to kind of complete the system. And then, as we know, it's just scaling up from there. We didn't have to use words like carports, for example, in the home installation, but to just take that up to the commercial level, it made it a lot easier to review the proposals for sure. The math is real similar anyway.
Yeah, certainly, and you're familiar with the terms. Well, so take us back. You were experiencing rising energy costs. You had some concerns over grid outages, and I'm sure skin biopsy samples and the processing that you do with them cannot. I know that there's certain elements that you cannot lose power within. So take us back to, okay, we've got some experience at home. We think we want to do something here at the business. How'd you go about it?
Well, I basically met you guys after processing a lot of frustration. I found, just as a business owner trying to reach out into, let's just say, the market and find a way to shop, in a level playing field way, it was impossible. I found just a wide range of companies that were offering similar but different scopes of services. I also found just that they just didn't know how to represent themselves, or I couldn't trust necessarily, or it wasn't easy for me to do research on them, especially in a time efficient way for me. I mean, I certainly am making a lot of other decisions, let's say quarter by quarter or year by year. This was a big one, and I knew that we needed to do our due diligence, but it was really apparent to me that I just didn't have anybody in my corner as a consultant type role that I could trust would represent me and help me kind of plow through all that without me having to do all that work completely on my own.
And were you looking You've mentioned carports. So were you looking specifically for solar, or were you, I believe at the time you were looking for some battery components, but there were some challenges associated with the folks that you were getting in touch with with at the time, not feeling that that was going to be a possibility for you. What was the experience trying to talk about technology beyond solar?
In terms of adding battery to the project,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the inconsistency. Some people had some battery experience, but they didn't all, or some people had just battery experience and didn't do solar panels. Nobody could really put the project together in a scope that would be at least minimally non-negotiable, and then there was room for options on top of that. But yeah, it was kind of more of that. Prices seemed to kind of be all over the place, so there was no way to really build trust into apples and apples comparison to price as well. And then I obviously met the team at VECKTA that helped immediately. Not only was there an intermediary platform that everybody was going to have to work inside of that bubble, and it was a field leveling and an accountability platform to me that eliminated all that uncertainty and put us on a much more traditional RFP process that I was familiar with, but hadn't. That took me back 20 years since I'd actually gone through a formal RFP process, which I believe in. I think it's great to do that. You invite everybody to the Q&A session, and it's very transparent, and it ends in a much better result than having to piecemeal shop and curate all that data yourself, or not to mention it brings in people besides you that are experts at this instead of, I don't know if I'd call myself an expert in dermatopathology at this point, but if I'm supposed to be an expert in anything, I'm supposed to be an expert in that, not in solar and battery technology. So how do you figure out how to get what you want and also pay the right price for it, right?
I think you're touching on a really key theme here, Bart, which is confidence to make an investment. It is a substantial investment, even for a business of your scale. It's a big check to write for something that you're going to enjoy benefits of for many years to come. Having the confidence to act is a really critical part of developing the project.
Yeah, and if I'm being honest too, it's like we probably could have done this 2 years ago. And as far as the timeline, and it's easy to say you're just always busy, and we certainly are at running our company. But when you're always constantly prioritizing and reprioritizing, there's always things that tend to be kind of put on the side burner. And this was one of them for a couple of years for us. And I realized the pandemic came along, and we had to put that as a priority. And everything the pandemic did to affect our business, that became critically a priority. With the benefit of hindsight, it would have been a nice window for me to do this project inside of that. I'm busier now than I was then in a way, but we were worried about business downturn at the beginning of the pandemic, and we didn't know what the other side of the pandemic was going to look like or how long it was going to take. So we did explore and kind of putter along, trying to do some research when we had spare time, but that took another couple of years until we finally kind of got out of our own way. But all of that is because we were trying to not delegate or not, kind of outsource the decision. And that was back to your point, Calvin, because of confidence. We didn't have anybody we could hand it to that we would feel confident would get it, over the goal line. So we held on to it, and we still wasted a fair amount of time. Not that the business didn't grow and the other things we gave priority, we did get those projects done, right? But there's only so much time in the quarter to do X number of projects sometimes too.
Yeah, the economist in me can't help but think about the opportunity cost of how many years of savings that you could have and should have had.
Right.
It's hard, right? Because you've also got the whole rest of your business to run. And I think your experience is really typical of business leaders, that we know that energy is important, but also running the whole rest of the business is important too.
Right. Yeah, I'm happy to say we just restriped our parking lot, and that only took 5 years to get done. Unfortunately, nobody bumped into each other in the parking lot, even though the stripes had worn off, right? But it was a low to medium priority that we finally got that project done eventually. But now, if somebody bumps in, we can clearly say, "Didn't you see the bright white lines on the parking lot?" But but you're always juggling all those things, and there's wear and tear on a building, and there's wear and tear on your business, and there's training new employees, and you hope you keep turnover down, and all that into growth years, which we've been blessed with, makes it that much more complex to weigh out these. And I would just say the climbing concern that was moving it up in priority is the when we started feeling inflation in the market, not just the job market, but also just supplies and the SDG&E bill as well. You start seeing things move around on your P&L statement. It helps to make those decisions. And I have, I don't have a crystal ball about what our SDG&E rates are going to be in 10 years, but pretty safe to say they're going to be more than they are now. And the sun will still be shining like it does today. So that's pretty solid, reliable partner. And so that, those are all things that kind of led towards that. But yeah, to increase the confidence immediately and have somebody in your corner, the way I think of it is we were missing that. And we've been very enterprising in our approach to dermatopathology all these years. I mean, we're one of the largest labs in the country now. And so we've had to blaze trail and do things not like other people because there's no one else necessarily to follow. And I know in our little niche subspecialty, that sounds funny to say, but there aren't a lot of dermatopathology labs in the U.S. market. So we can't copy, other proven recipes as easily either. So we're used to holding on and just struggling and figuring out things. And we're not afraid to do that, but it also comes at a cost of time for sure. And you know me now well enough to know I probably did too much of a rabbit hole dive down into crunching the numbers anyway. I can't help it, but the math has to make sense, a year from now. And so you just do everything you can to try to vet everything and make sure that you're going to see a return on that bigger ticket item too.
Yeah.
But you got to pull the trigger at some point as well and get the savings started. So
yeah, Bart, I've never heard someone refer to the sun as a great partner. I'm going to use that. I love that. That was incredible. A very reliable partner. Well, but on the subject of partners, so you mentioned running an RFP process. You got 5 proposals as part of that process. Walk our listeners through. Okay, you built an RFP. How did you go through making sure that you were asking the right things, and then how did you evaluate those proposals that did come in?
Well, I mean, the guys at VECKTA helped a lot with that. I mean, a lot of it was, it was pretty straightforward. I mean, they did a good job. Obviously we did a really thorough site survey, and we talked at length several times about, what would be the right framework for a project for our site, which we realized is unique probably every time. But we spent a lot of time doing just due diligence on what was possible at our location, and we could call that max production or max generation, if you will, but also, how do you install that? Our location, I don't know how typical our location or our footprint is, but we have a lot of mechanical on the roof, so we don't have a roof that's easy to put a lot of solar panels on. That's back because of the laboratory. We have a lot of exhaust fans, unfortunately throwing conditioned air away because it could have contaminants in the fumes from the lab processes that we can't recycle. Even if we keep it at the right temperature, we still have to kind of toss it outside. So that tears up my roof footprint to where we had to look at carports on above the parking lot spaces, and we did have plenty of room for that. And we have a canyon in the back that we could still use. We decided not to use, but the molding of that possibilities helped us write the RFP. And then the rest of it was, a lot of it was, I would say, still, standard expectations of anybody that's going to respond. But at least we were able to kind of get down to a standard that we would be happy with if we could find someone that could do it all. We didn't know what we were going to find as far as what their capabilities were going to be. And then, I think we didn't want to do too many, responses. So I think I was really happy with 6 that we felt like we could reduce it down to pretty quickly, and then really kind of get down into the interviews where we could figure out who we might work with better. We eventually got down into some subjective decisions of just who we felt like would be the best fits. But that process was very organized. It was also not, I can't remember, Calvin, how long was that whole process? A month?
Yeah, around about.
Yeah. And so that was very time efficient. And I'm not going to speak for them, but I feel like the respondents also, I mean, they seemed like it worked well for them too. And the proposal started coming in, and everybody felt pretty timely to me as far as responding to the RFP.
Yeah, I think because you're using a platform and you're using that to structure and get organized, it actually makes life a lot easier for the suppliers too. If you had have called them before you got to know VECKTA and asked them for a proposal, it's hard for them too, because you don't quite know what to ask for, and they know that you don't quite know what you want, and you haven't done all of the right groundwork yet. So it does make it hard. The suppliers are in a tough spot where they want to say yes, and they want to give you something useful, but without some good guidelines about what it is that you're looking for, it is where you start to see that inconsistency in what people get back to you with, because through no fault of yours or theirs, people are sort of talking across each other a little bit.
One of my favorite parts was having them all come here on the same day for a big Q&A, and that was the site walk, and they were all, and I was happy with that role for me. That took me again back to some roles I've had 20 years ago, and I believe in it. I believe it immediately. It's important that everyone sees who they're bidding against, and then that's where a lot of those subtle differences start to surface, where I may not have said anything, but I noticed who didn't ask any questions and who asked a lot of questions. Made me immediately start forming an opinion on how thorough were they going to be. And I'm not saying that would necessarily translate into their work product as far as somebody on their crew, not cutting corners or being more thorough, but it was still just encouraging to hear the level of detail of the questions, and some new ideas came out of that too, or some options were proposed that I hadn't thought of, and it helped. It didn't change the project a lot, but it at least gave it a little bit of a kind of 10% refinement maybe that I appreciated. We're putting in, for example, a couple of car chargers that we originally we really were kind of put on the side burner, and now it's nice in hindsight to know that we did that, because I think we're happy that it's kind of like a cherry on top. It wasn't mission critical for the business that we do that, but for a couple of VIP employees that can park in the back, we're going to have a car charger kind of thing. So, but you have to have that in the design. Obviously, it's probably a lot harder to add it after the fact, right? So for those vendors that brought it up, it was nice that they brought it up in that site walk day.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the two sides of your supplier selection process. One being the more fact-based, disciplined RFP process of understanding the price and the specifications and the terms of the contract and what have you. And then the other being the personal connection and the values fit between yourselves and the company that you ended up working with.
Sure. I feel like the more technical side, I'll try to answer it a couple different ways. As far as engaging with them for both of those, maybe the math checked out, and I checked it and they checked it, and we kind of met in the middle. And I felt like the proposal, it wasn't heavy on either legalese, or it wasn't too long. It was just kind of get to the point, laying out the scope of the project. The analytics that they did, pulling all the data off our meters and crunching all that, was real straightforward. At least I felt like it was, to get in, because there's there is a certain level of complexity to trying to make sure you size the system correctly and you're covering all the different angles of the calendar year, let's say. But and then I would just say generally, so we chose a company called Industria, and I think that just interacting with them, their willingness to the handshake, so to speak, the immediate, like let's do a couple of Zoom calls, and it definitely family friendly relationship was forged pretty much right away. So that is important to me personally. We are a family owned business. I realize we're in a completely different company, or industry, but it's the same relationship that we try to have with all of our customers. One of the things we kind of say, for example, is to our doctors that work for us, or my wife and I culturally tell the company, we want to make sure we're practicing medicine as if it was on a family member all the time. Like that's how we should be treating the city of San Diego or the county of San Diego. You shouldn't think that there's a better service level for just because all of a sudden it's a family member. And so Ralph and his team immediately disarmed us and made us feel like they were going to take care of us. You can definitely see the work ethic in him and the passion and I just thought it's a challenge to do that as quickly as he did with me, at least. So it didn't feel corporate. It didn't feel like they were on the East Coast. At least nothing wrong with the East Coast, but we're on the West Coast, right? So it felt like they were in our backyard and knew the market. He definitely articulated pretty quickly a familiarity with the local, the city permitting office, and I thought that was a competitive advantage clearly that he had over some of the others. In our backyard, and I don't know if that's necessary, but it was a difference for us that I wanted. I like working with local contractors for pretty much anything, but yeah, I would say that soft side is as important, and the project's just starting, right? We're about to work with each other for the next 4 or 5 months, and that has continued. I just talked to them the other day just about checking in with each other before we go away for a couple of weeks for the holidays, and they're easy to reach and right in sync, and I just checked in and they said, you're right, we haven't needed you for anything yet, so you haven't missed anything. I wanted to make sure I hadn't missed anything that I was supposed to do before I went away for the holidays, but they're already in the engineering and permitting process, and things are moving along already, and he said it would be kind of quiet while they did that piece, because they can't break ground until they get all that sorted out. But yeah, they've just jumped in, it seems like, and the timeline is still, on time.
Love it. Bart, what did you, from an energy system perspective, what did you guys land on, and how different, if at all, was that from what you had initially envisioned, or the proposal or proposals that you'd received prior to engaging in this more structured process?
You mean just like what did we end up with, the end product end up looking like?
Yeah.
What we started?
Yeah.
I mean, I was all over the place at the beginning. So, I mean, I'm trying to actually remember. I looked at a generator. Was generator something we should look at? And would that be electric or gas? I knew solar was something we wanted to do. How would those work together? And then I started off, I honestly thought battery was going to be a lot more expensive and maybe even out of our price reach. And I'm really happy that it wasn't. And I read enough about battery that kind of there's, several generations of battery and what's bad and what's not and what's good. But I really wanted to have, and I skipped over this a second ago, back to the sensitivity of how much work we do in our lab every day. As that work became more and more per day, we really don't want to completely trust the grid to always be up. So we were worried. We haven't had a brownout of any kind of quick successions and across multiple days in a few years, but that, knock on wood, I was more and more worried that we needed some kind of disaster prevention component, not just enjoying not being on the grid on a normal sunny day in San Diego, and so all of these things were kind of like, how much of this is just too much to put in one box? And so that if I had any kind of lack of confidence or or struggle with even articulating what we needed. It kind of had a certain amount of messiness to it. Critical lab systems that if the brownout just happened or the blackout happened just at the wrong time of the day, halfway through some of the lab jobs, would we be able to retrieve, what was in there, or were we going to permanently ruin anything? Fortunately, the answer is no, but it would cost us downtime, and it would cost us having to redo stuff twice. Some of the lab supplies are expensive, and we'd have to consume those supplies twice for some things, but it could be a whole day's worth of work. What we were headed towards was the home run was to find a system that did it all. And that ended up taking generator kind of for us off the table, and battery moved into that role of having stored energy so that we could always have enough for that contingency event, unexpected, unscheduled contingency event, even if it was 5 minutes or 5 hours. And then otherwise have a general building solar system that would be trying to keep us off the grid, every single minute possible. We came through that process, definitely refined it a lot along the way. And then I think the rest of it was making a decision on size, how much to buy, because we ended up realizing once we kind of really got our handle on how much we consumed, and I will add in for fun, it forced me through an exercise of where were we wasting energy in the building, which was just low-hanging fruit for me to go around and ask how many devices are on that don't need to be on, or how many lights are on, so to speak, at night that aren't getting turned off, in so many words. And we found some savings there, but we still bought for the future. So we ended up deciding to purchase a system a little larger than we necessarily needed on paper, but it checks all the boxes for protecting the business from SDG&E, nothing against them, but just from the grid, no matter what might happen unexpectedly. You have a weird, unseasonably hot day or something, or an earthquake, hopefully miles and miles away, or any other kind of natural event that could cause something to destabilize on the grid. We're protected from that, or will be. And then, fortunately, it's almost always sunny, so it ought to be mostly days of sun, during the normal business days. So yeah, I'm not sure if I got into the answer there, but that's kind of part of the before and the after journey, the way I kind of remember it.
I'm curious, Bart, because you had a number of people beyond just yourselves, Industria, who you ended up selecting, some of the other suppliers in VECKTA. You had employees to think about. You had your building, I forget what the name is, your building co-op or the building owners council. You had a number of different stakeholders involved in getting to a decision. You had some tax advisors involved. I wonder if for our listeners, you could just talk through what your process looked like, and the other folks that you brought along the journey to get to a good decision.
Sure. Well, I mean, to the extent that listeners might be part of an HOA, or it depends on how they're situated in their buildings, I guess. I had to go through a process of making sure the HOA approved the project. Now, I'm one of 4 buildings, and that's not like we're a 50 building park or something like that. But that process was still something that I didn't want to skip or cut any corners on. We do have CC&Rs, and we do have rules. Our group of owners all get along with each other, which is probably not normal, but that was a process. And I will say, though, that put me in the position of I had to kind of soft sell, if you will, or I had to at least give everybody a copy of the proposal, and then I did have to kind of explain it. What ended up coming out of that was actually a surprise. They're all like, now I'm kind of going to be the first one through the wall, so to speak, and they can benefit from whatever happens. And they're all, fingers crossed, rooting for me because they all want to copy our idea and install it at the other 3 buildings. And the neighbor on the other side of me on our street, which is not part of our HOA, he owns his 5-acre property of a couple of buildings, and he does have a pristinely clean roof, and he's also got a parking lot. And so he's also like gonna sit next door and with his popcorn watch the construction, and wants to hear how it goes. So I have had so much fun with this, talking to the other business owners, that I think, because we're all kind of friends, and we really bonded together during. I'm not going to keep going back to the pandemic, but you kind of have to remember we live in kind of a weird time post pandemic. We all got to know each other in a weird way that we wouldn't otherwise. We don't compete. We do different things, but we leaned on each other during the pandemic and shared all that experience together too. So now that in a weird way set the stage for us to know each other and talk about building improvements and business improvements. And so I think we're going to have some kind of a launch party, is what I wanted to say, where they're going to come over and watch me push the on button, so to speak. But that aside, I'll pivot to an intimidating, separate, but very important part of a process like this is, do you need to have legal, but to a greater degree, I would say your CPA and any kind of a tax accountant or even a tax lawyer. Do you have them all on the same page with what's being proposed? And I am very comfortable with the process of everyone sitting in a room saying, I don't know, but some of this law is so fresh that I did find some variance out in the market. So I ended up talking to, I think I talked to 3 CPAs. It was at least 3 CPAs. And one of those kind of a friend that didn't charge me kind of thing, but to the extent that I sensed not all 3 of them immediately gave me the same answer. I'm like, okay, there's some interpretability in the tax credit laws. There's some interpretability in the depreciation laws. I'll cut to the chase and say I'm happy. All of the possible uncertain and possibly deal killing or deal limiting ROI type things all proved out to be false. So I'm super happy that I went through the process of driving all those things to the ground. But I did go through a process where I had to kind of be comfortable for a little while, or be patient for a little while, that not everybody kind of had all the answers right, at the outset. So do your homework, I guess, is the age-old lesson there for everybody listening on such a sizable type investment. You should anyway, but trust but verify kind of logic. And I would recommend second opinions for CPAs. And as usual, a lot of times the government doesn't write really simple, easy to read laws on this stuff. You kind of have to kind of wander around between the pages and refer back and over and across, and that's how this kind of stuff reads. If you hold your mouth just right, you can run it through the gate. If someone's really a stickler for the rules or more narrow-minded, they may not. But we've thoroughly vetted, and I'll just say, if I just kind of sum up, maybe it doesn't really matter the details of my project, just that I was able to just verify, which is kind of nice, that the tax credit's keyed off of the start of construction, which could be separate. It's the beginning of your project, which is going to be multiple months long. And it could, for me, it is going to overlap the 2024 and the 2025 tax years. So I'm going to claim the tax credit in 24, which is great. I can use it faster. And I have plenty of other business growth related things that I can apply it against. And then all the depreciation, as usual, kicks in at the time the project goes to life or comes to life and goes into use. So, but getting all that in a spreadsheet, making sure you got all your columns right, it takes a little while to get it all, ironed out. So yeah, that's part of it. And, but the math is sound, and the extra boosts are there for the business owner to help drive down the net cost of a system like this because of those things.
Yep. Bart, you've done a tremendous job kind of walking us through. You've actually signed on the dotted line, and you're proceeding forward with this. How, can you just share with our listeners, was there anything in particular or summation of kind of how you got there and VECKTA's role in helping you feel good about where you're headed?
Oh yeah, I mean, some of this we covered, but it was just pretty straightforward process to reduce the field down to, I think we kind of reduced it down to 2, and then slept on that for another week. And then they were there again. They stayed, or they're still in my corner, but they were there to review the contract together. They had input and some things that they recommended that we add that I hadn't thought of, which was more value add. And then just otherwise, the contract was actually, like I mentioned, it was a very fair and balanced contract from when it was presented. So it was pretty easy to get through it. And then we've signed, and they're there with me through this whole process. And so it's a approximately 5-month project. We're on track, and we're in the first month, like I mentioned before. But yeah, it's gonna be fun and exciting as we get around the holidays and into the first quarter to actually watch construction start, and that's going to be the fun, obvious progress. But yeah, it's smooth sailing.
We're excited to join you on the commissioning with your neighboring building owners when you press the on switch. I want to switch to our power surge round, and eager to hear your responses to a couple of these. So I'll kick things off. What if you could be any one energy technology, what would it be and why?
Yeah, I've been trying to think about this for a couple minutes. I've been to try to have fun with this, and I realize I'm going to jump way ahead. But I mean, I don't know what I'll see in my lifetime, but I don't know how we use. I would say nuclear. I mean, I don't think there's anything that's pound for pound. I don't know where we're going to go with petroleum, and how many more decades we're going to get out of that. But my wife and I are both. I wouldn't call us Trekkies. That's maybe. Well, I don't know if that word is what we would call ourselves, but we love Star Trek. So we have watched now over the last, 30 years, some of the actual stuff in the early Star Trek actually come to life in our lifetime, or some version of it. I just think that's super cool. So kind of in that same theme of, I realize we're probably never going to see teleportation, but God, that'd be a game changer. But I like what I see. I realize, SpaceX is doing extremely innovative things in our lifetime, for example, and we see a lot of how much it costs to do a lot of that trial and error. But as we see ourselves explore further and further away, obviously we're having to figure out how to create or harness energy in a way that allows us to do more than we've ever been able to do. So I think I would identify more with that. It's just kind of some super cool stuff if we can invent better and better rockets and more efficient, things that don't accidentally blow up is obviously important too. But can we see, that type of technology? Otherwise, I would just say, bringing it back down to earth, maybe I would say flying cars is going to be super cool when we figure that out. So I realize we kind of have to have flying transport, vehicles that transport packages for Amazon probably needs to come first, and taxis maybe follow. But as long as they can figure out how to do that safely, that's going to be cool to see as far as use of energy. And if that's a combination of solar, it could certainly be, that'd be kind of cool. But there's going to have to be some kind of super awesome battery in those things too. Maybe a next gen battery. So it'll just be super neat if they do that in the next, 30 years, what they're going to do.
Love it. I like the idea of tracking Star Trek and seeing what they've come up with and projecting that out. That's great. Any particular, as you've gone on your journey and researching this as a building owner far outside of or a business owner far outside of energy, anything that you found particularly helpful as you were researching? Any resources or podcasts, or not a plug for Renewable Rides by any means?
Yeah, no. I don't. I did a lot of. I just did a lot of research on the internet, but I don't know if I would say any particular, website necessarily. But just anything you can do to demystify the acronyms, so to speak, and they've named some of this stuff. It seems like purposely confusing. So for the business owner that doesn't have any kind of a background in electrical terms or the numbers around a lot of the terms, a good foundational familiarity. Even I don't know if there is a For Dummies book on this stuff, but anything like that would help, because it just is going to make it not only easier to talk to your contractors or talk to anyone involved in the process, but the difference between a kilowatt and a kilowatt hour is that's already like going to stump like 95% of America, I feel like. So those are funny things to say because we know the difference, but a lot of people are immediately confused, right? So how do you get your head around the numbers if you don't kind of spend a little bit of time understanding how electricity works, right? So
a large reason why we do the podcast to help highlight some of those things. Bart, we'll close with, and this does not have to be energy related at all, but if you were to finish this statement, in my life, I will have been successful when?
Personally, or not the project? Personally?
Personally.
Man, that is too hard of a question. Fun answer is when I have done another Ironman.
Nice.
That's my immediate goal, personal goal. I've done one. So just for fun for your listeners, I did one right before I turned 30. I just turned 55 today. I got 5 more years before I'm twice as old as I was when I did my one and only Ironman. So kind of on my bucket list, I've been scratching at the possibility of, can I do another one when I turn 60? So, but all my success isn't hung on that. That's just kind of my short-term success. I'll under the umbrella of stay healthy so I can live to see 90 maybe. So not asking for too much, I don't think.
So if what I'm hearing is your third Ironman will be when you turn 90, because you're going to get this one at 60.
Right. You want to extrapolate that? I don't know if anyone's ever done an Ironman at 90. Maybe I have to look that up, but yeah, live well, live healthy for sure. So that would be personal success. It's not money. I mean, it's fun to play with money and play with the levers of optimal business performance and profitability. Those are certainly fun puzzles and challenges for the mind. But time's what our ultimate commodity is. So how can we extend that? As I've gotten older, I tie the word success more to how well you're doing managing time. So
great way to close, Bart. Really appreciate the time today, especially on your birthday. Really appreciate the you even going down this path and wanting to deploy renewables and your trust in VECKTA, and we'll check back in with you after we get the project completed. But thank you for your time, and again, happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to do it and happy to follow up.
Beautiful. All right. Take care, Bart.
All right. Fantastic.
We receive a lot of questions from business leaders around the world wanting to learn more about the energy transition, what is possible, and where to start. So to help you stay informed and up to date on best practices, opportunities, risks, and success stories, we created an industry newsfeed at VECKTA.com/news with all our podcasts, blogs, and newsletter. Check it out and connect with Dan, myself, and the VECKTA team to learn more. Cheers and have a good one.